Here's our first circuit. It's just a simple LED circuit. Power coming from the 5-volt and ground pin in the Arduino into the breadboard. But our LED is really getting powered by pin number 9, which is a PWM pin. That goes through this green jumper cable into the LED through the limiting resistor and back to ground. Over here we have our program. So the top, declaring and initializing our LED pin. We have the pin function getting specified as the output in the void setup section. Then in the void loop section, we are using the analog write function by specifying the pin and its value to change the intensity. So it starts off at 25%, delays for a second, then goes to 50%, delays, 75, delays, and 100. Go ahead and run this circuit. Plug it in first. 25%, 50%, 75, and 100. Then it repeats. So here's our next circuit. In this circuit we have our potentiometer and our Arduino powering our DC motor. So all it is we have our 5-volt and ground pins going to the breadboard powering that. We have this jumper cable coming from 5 volts going through the potentiometer, and potentiometer then goes back to ground through this jumper cable and the green one here. Over here we have our DC motor connected to the wiper of the potentiometer, and then it goes back to ground through its black cable over here. Now let's go ahead and plug it in. Turn on the potentiometer, and the DC motor runs. So here's our next circuit. This circuit has 2 power supplies. We have our Arduino and then our 9-volt battery. The 5-volt pin powers this positive power rail, while the ground pin powers this negative power rail. Then over here, our 9-volt battery powers these 2 power rails, but we also have this yellow jumper cable in the middle connecting the 2 grounds. Down here we have our pot. This pot has a control signal coming from this analog pin and this green jumper cable. Over here, it's getting powered by the 5-volt pin, which goes through the pot and back down to ground. We have our MOSFET transistor here. That's the right pin, or the right side of it, is getting connected to ground, while the left side of it is getting powered by our digital pin 9, the PWM pin. Over here we have our DC motor. This DC motor is connected to or getting powered by the 9-volt battery, and that power goes through this diode and into the positive side of our DC motor. Then the negative side comes down, goes through the diode again, the negative side of the diode, and to the center of our MOSFET transistor. So here's our program. At the top we're declaring and initializing our potentiometer value and our PWM pin value. And the void setup section, we are specifying the function of our PWM pin, which is digital pin number 9, to an output. We're also using the serial begin function with the 9600 baud rate. In our void loop section, we're starting off with a small delay just to slow down the serial monitor readings. Then we also are using the analog read function so we can read off the potentiometer values. Then we are using the map function where we're converting the potentiometer values, which are normally 0 to 1023, to PWM values, which are 0 to 255. Then we use the serial print line function to print out the PWM values onto our serial monitor. And then we use our analog write function to provide PWM power through digital pin number 9. Alright, let's go ahead and put this to the test. Right now, serial monitor is reading 0. Let's go ahead and turn up our pot. On with it 255. So here's our final circuit. This circuit is pretty much the same as the last circuit, except we've added this push button here. This push button is getting powered from the 5 volts of the Arduino. It also is connected to digital pin 8, the power goes through this 10K ohm pull-up resistor, down around through the push button and back down to ground. So here's our program for that circuit. At the top, we declare to initialize our potentiometer value, our PWM value, and our push button. Then in our void setup section, we specify our functions, our pin functions with the pin mode. So our PWM pin, pin number 9 is output, and our push button is input with a pull-up resistor. Then we have our series begin function with the 9600 baud rate. In our void loop section, we have a delay, small delay, to help us read the serial monitor. Then we use the analog read function, so our program can read the potentiometer value. Then we declare to initialize our push button, or the value for the push button, with our digital read function. Then we use our serial print line function to print out the value of the potentiometer. Over here we have our if-else statement. So if our potentiometer value is greater than 500 and our push button is pushed in, then that will trigger first our map function, which will convert the 0 to 1023 values of the potentiometer to 0 to 255 for the PWM, and the analog write function will give power to that PWM pin. Else, that will turn that PWM pin off. Alright, let's put it to the test. So right now, as you can see, our potentiometer value is less than 500. Go ahead and turn it up. Now it's above 500. We're going to press our push button. The motor runs. Now let's put it below 500. Press the push button. Nothing happens. Back up again.